People are in a big middle class squeeze right now. Paychecks seem stuck while expenses keep rising.
Lagging wages, rising food, fuel, and grocery prices, credit card debt, interest rates, higher mortgage payments, rent going up, medical expenses, college education, you name it. Americans are feeling the financial pinch.
Today, we're talking about very real financial struggles that most people in middle-class America are facing, along with solutions to help you make progress regardless of where you're starting.
In a recent Pew Research study, I saw a real interesting statistic where the middle class in 1970 controlled 62% of the wealth and income in the United States. And now the wealthy upper class, the 3%, have crossed over, and we see that the middle class now is approaching the lower class while the upper 3% of the population is rising and controls now most of the wealth in the United States. This is a real issue, and it has to do with the way the middle class handles their money.
That's a big switch because America was known for a big, healthy middle class that did control most of the finances, most of the economy. And you're saying that has now switched, so the upper class controls more of the wealth?
It has.
Wow.
And so what are the things that the middle class has done that has caused and allowed that switch? We can't blame it on the rich people because all they're doing is providing the services that the middle class is longing for and going after. And they're buying it on debt, and they're extending their budgets to buy things that maybe weren't so necessary back in the 70s.
Well, of course, we could blame it all on rising costs for everything. Well, the middle class just has to pay out for necessities now. But that may be only part of the story. There's also a culture around, that has crept into the middle class that has led to some of this poverty.
So when you said the word necessities, that caught my ear because a lot of things that people have nowadays, they consider necessities that were not considered necessities years ago. I mean, just Apple phone or any phone comes out and now it's a necessity. Everyone needs one. And I will admit they are very nice to have, but they are now seen as a necessity. And then all the children in the family should have a phone or a device. And, even televisions years ago, 1960s, there might be a television in a home. Not always was there a television in a home, but now there's 4, 5, 6. How many televisions in a home are seen as a necessity? So those necessities get redefined. And sometimes the middle class falls into thinking that just because somebody else has this luxury, it is now a luxury that they need, and it becomes a necessity.
Entertainment is seen as a necessity for a lot of people. Having all of those televisions to be constantly entertained with an incoming stream, if you're not looking at the television, maybe you're looking at the phone. But having some source of entertainment seems to be a big part of the middle class culture nowadays. That may be a part of why they're not controlling as much wealth. If they're focused on entertainment instead, they're not focused necessarily on production and how they can improve different aspects of their life.
I was just reading an article the other day about Klarna, the buy now, pay later app that's out that has no application to get your credit score going. And people are using this now to purchase their DoorDash.
I've seen it at different checkouts. I think it's even available on Amazon, isn't it?
It is. What's happening is the expense that causes people if they miss one payment. The penalties for a late fee are enormous. Interest rates are like 29%, which is almost 5% higher than the average credit card balance. And a credit card balance you have to apply for and prove that you have some type of financial credibility. With this, you just plug it out and there you go. And these things are the type of things that are making the middle class struggle. You mentioned, Michelle, that the televisions, but Thomas Sowell, the great economist, has said that even air conditioning back in the 1960s wasn't in every household in America. And today it is in almost every household. And the square footage that we have to live in to feel comfortable today I grew up in a family of 8, and we lived in an 800-foot square house. Now, we were tight. I didn't realize how tight we were until we got older, but we don't maybe need the footprint that we think we do to survive as a middle-class American.
I think that social media does a lot to encourage people to keep up with the Joneses, or maybe it's displayed to them constantly what other people are doing. I was looking on social media just the other day and happened to notice one of my contacts is suddenly making a lot of posts, and it's because she's in a foreign country doing some very wonderful things, but we don't see that every day. We just see, oh wow, she's on a glorious trip, and then that can make the viewers think, oh, what do I need to do to keep up? And that may not be part in their lifestyle, or if they make it part of their lifestyle, it causes other problems.
It's a peer pressure.
Yes.
It's a peer pressure, unspoken many times, and yet it's prevalent on social media. And that naturally happens because you're going to post the best parts of your life on social media. Everybody does, because you want to keep up that image, but then it encourages everybody else to try and keep up with the image. Even when it's an unspoken peer pressure.
So if you can have a cognitive notice of that and realize, oh, I can look at this and enjoy it, but not be trying to attain the same thing, that can help you in your economy.
I was reading an article by Rabbi Daniel Lapin the other day. He was talking about the change in culture from like the 1960s to present day, and how so many of the houses that you drive by today will have peeling paint and lack of maintenance, potholes in the road. Maintenance is not part of what's fun in life. It's a lot more fun to spend or go on a trip and post about it. But maintenance is necessary. And so he says there was a shift in the culture from being more religious focused to a more secular focus. And he said people that have lost the religious focus tend to be focused on what's happening right now, living in the present. And it's good to live in the present, not to be, distracted by other things, but you need that perspective that's provided by the past and thinking about where the future is headed. And in a culture that is just focused on what's happening at the present, maintenance isn't important. So a lot of the decay that we see in the fact that homes are falling apart, streets are falling apart, is because of the cultural focus. It's not on maintaining what we have, taking care of that. It's a symptom of what's happening at a deeper level in our culture.
That goes even to the rising cost of healthcare. I mean, hospitals used to be this very little building in the city, and now they've taken over cities. And it's because people have forgotten how to maintain their health. And the conveniences that we have and the ability and the easy credit, people are flying to New York for a day to experience an exotic restaurant and coming home and, having a $4,000 bill because they had a day in New York City. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's your entertainment. But to do that on a regular basis, you're not only not maintaining your financial status, you're deteriorating your health status too, which causes healthcare costs to go up.
And people are often looking for something that they can pay for that will quickly take care of a health issue rather than looking at the cause and making changes to their lifestyle. And so all of these things are really that we're noticing in the financial environment. A lot of them can be adjusted by our thinking and realizing what is causing us to notice problems and how can we find a solution to address these things, because we're alive. We're going to have challenges, we're going to have problems, but there are things that we can do to overcome these things.
Yeah, and it's a matter of deciding where do you want to face some of these problems. Do you want to face it at the everyday level in your financial life, or do you want to face higher level problems that can cause you to grow and to achieve more?
This brings up educational costs. So many people that we see and work with have huge debt just for student loans. And it's not just students that have graduated from college, it's parents that have gone into debt to help their child get through college. And this has interfered with the ability to help those parents save for their own retirement. So what it's setting up is a process where now when those parents get to retirement age, who's going to help them? Who's going to help them out of their financial bind? Statistics show that, less than 50% of Americans have $1,000 saved in case an expense comes up that is unexpected. 39% of those have less than $500 saved. And that's dangerous. It's because of some of these things that we're talking about that has caused that issue.
I was reading the other day, the cost of education has gone up nearly 8 times faster than wages have increased. So it leads to the question, is a college education really still worth it? And while the cost of that education is going up so high, the quality of the education is going down. You were telling us just the other day that Harvard has started having to teach basic math again.
Yeah, they started their first remedial math class because their entry-level students cannot do just regular old math. And this is an Ivy League school, supposed to be one of our elite institutions, and they're having to teach people that are entering their ivory towers how to do basic math.
That seems like definitely a cultural level issue. If the basic learning is not taking place at a level before they get to Harvard, and Harvard's having to do this, then that points at a deeper level problem.
Add that to the college students who are ordering donuts on DoorDash and maybe even using Klarna, and their remedial math at Harvard. We've got a problem that could be snowballing for many Americans, but it doesn't have to be snowballing for all Americans. So we're going to take a break right now, and when we get back from the break, we're going to talk about some solutions to overcome this middle class squeeze.
If infinite banking is a simple process, why does it seem so complicated? Could it be that infinite banking started out as something simple, but over time has morphed into a convoluted series of buying insurance policies to borrow from insurance policies so you can pay interest on your own money and somehow come out ahead? Could it be that infinite banking has been turned into a catchphrase and is marketed to seem exclusive, something for just the super wealthy or financially savvy? We think the answers to both of these questions are yes, so that's why we're holding a seminar called Infinite Banking Made Simple. This seminar will give you everything you need to know about infinite banking, what it is, and how it works. No mind-bending magic, no number gymnastics, just infinite banking made simple. If you're new to infinite banking, if you're somewhat familiar with infinite banking, or if you've known about infinite banking for a long time, this is the seminar for you. We will be covering infinite banking, what it is, how it works, and how to use it in your life. The seminar is scheduled for May 2nd and 3rd. That's a Friday and Saturday in Indianapolis. Make sure you schedule that time on your calendar now because, as you know, life finds a way to fill up even the most important dates. May 2nd and 3rd. Registration details are on the website linked here and in the description box below. May 2nd and 3rd, Indianapolis. We want to see you there.
I was reading an article about Dave Ramsey was talking about buying a $100 shirt. And if you buy it on time and miss a payment in the meantime, then you could end up paying $121 for that $100 shirt. Now, maybe a $100 shirt is necessary and maybe it isn't, but paying $121 for a $100 shirt is foolishness. And it all comes down to savings. If you can just save up so that you have the money to make your purchase, you don't have to be worried about that extra expense that's going to come. And I think this extra expense that we're talking about here is what has caused the middle class to lose that position that we talked about earlier, where they control most of the wealth in the United States. Because where is that interest being paid? It's being paid to the upper class.
So planning ahead, if someone knew they had an expensive $100 shirt coming up and had planned ahead by saving, then they could purchase that shirt from their savings and not have to pay the extra, not have to pay $120 or $121 for that $100 shirt.
And that's the crux of the infinite banking concept. Let's save up so we have a pool of money, a storehouse of wealth, as Nelson Nash called it, where we can leverage that money and make our purchases and then pay it back as if we had bought it on time. And now we'll have what we borrowed plus what we paid back and would have lost there for us to build something else with.
And some people would say, well, hey, I'm not expecting, I'm not planning to buy a $100 shirt, so I don't need to save. But the fact is, we will have expenses that come up. And so, yes, we do need to save for the future. Whether we know we're going to buy a $100 shirt or not, we should be saving for our future.
It's going to take time to save up to buy the shirt. It's going to take time to pay it off on credit. Time's going to go by anyway. So we might as well put that money in a place where we can use it over and over again. And that's what infinite banking is all about.
I remember Nelson Nash said, you finance everything you buy. You either give up interest that you could have earned, or you pay interest to somebody else to use their money to buy whatever you're going to buy. And that's true. That is the fundamental principle of the infinite banking concept. And when we recognize that and arrange our finances in order to recognize that reality in our life, then we can profit from it. If we don't think through things that far, then we're always behind the 8 ball, always looking at the next thing. And so when people chase travel experiences or they chase, all of the luxuries that they want their life to be filled with, and they do that first without an eye to the financing, then they're going to suffer the consequences. They're always going to be behind the 8 ball that way. And so the infinite banking concept, you change your thinking so you can get ahead of the process, and then you can profit from those things instead of always catching up from behind.
John, I remember my mom and dad telling me when they first got married, they moved to Texas so my dad could go to college, and they actually lived in a chicken house behind a pastor's house.
Were the chickens still in it, or
the chickens weren't there anymore?
They had moved out. Okay.
But my mom took dirt and mixed water with it and mud to patch the holes in the floor so that they would have a congruent floor that was completely weatherproof and sealed. And when they did that, and my dad brought some stuff home from the roofing company he worked off and fixed the roof so it wasn't leaking. And when they did, that pastor that was renting that chicken house to them raised their rent.
That's not fair.
And my parents wouldn't want to go back and live in the chicken house.
Oh no.
That's where they started. Today, when people start, they think they have to have, wall-to-wall carpet or the latest flooring. They have to have the latest lighting. They have to have the most up-to-date, carpet, whatever it is in their apartment. They've got to have it all furnished, and that's not necessarily what creates happiness and productivity. My parents went on to help each one of their children put a down payment on a house because they learned frugality early in life. And I don't think that middle-class people are learning to save so that they really never get what they want. And they're always chasing these experiences rather than just the value in being able to save and recover the money that they're spending on the things they purchase in life.
Well, many times people give up what they want most for what they want now. And they don't want to put a squeeze on themselves to save. And so they become in a position where the financial environment and institutions put a squeeze on them for what they have spent. Mm-hmm. And so, there is pain in this life. There are financial challenges. So how we discipline ourselves determines where those challenges come from and how much we get to control of those challenges.
That reminds me of what Zig Ziglar used to say. He said, life is tough, but when you're tough on yourself, life becomes infinitely easier on you.
Nelson Nash used to talk about in his seminar that he had to get alone by himself in the corner and figure out exactly what it is that he needed and what he could save. We have to reevaluate our life, and middle-class Americans need to evaluate their life and find out how much of what they're chasing is really needed and necessary in their life, and how much of that they're spending should be putting away so that they are being able to leverage those savings and get what they want in the future. Because time's going to pass anyway.
We encourage people to start with at least 10% of their income, but some people, depending on where they're starting, they need to start with a lot more than that. Some people need to save until it hurts. And if they do, then they're going to be in a better position to meet the financial challenges that arise in life and to continue living a middle-class lifestyle.
And, it's possible for people to pull out from the debt that they've incurred and to overcome the price increases or the lagging wages or the cost of education or healthcare expenses if they will just sit down and evaluate what in my life is really necessary, where's my money going, and how much am I keeping for when I can't work as hard and as long as I am today.
This reminds me of the conversation I had with Jared just the other day. A few years ago, he called us and purchased a life insurance policy for our infinite banking. His finances were not great, but he was not in debt. So he purchased a policy, and although the policy had cash value right away, Jared has not taken a loan in the last several years, but he called me because he wants to borrow a portion of the cash value that is accumulated because he's going back to school for a little bit more training, about a 6-month program. And when he's done, he will be able to get a higher paying job that will add improvement to his finances. At the same time, he said, by the way, I'm also ready to start another policy now. And that policy premium is even higher than what he started out with because he has seen the value and he has realized he can save more than he was saving. This is going to give him even more cash value and be a great boon to his personal economy.
Jared is using his life insurance as a savings vehicle. That's an excellent way to use it. He doesn't have to use it right away to be doing infinite banking because he started out saving and now he has a bigger chunk of money to use with the infinite banking process.
That's right. And when I filled out the application for him, we were able to add that increase of net worth that was in that cash value of the life insurance policy.
Excellent.
Jared is a living example of the biblical admonition that if you are faithful over a little, you'll be put in charge of much. Now he's doubled what he's been put in charge of because he's been faithful in the little. And this is the way the middle class can regain that dominance in controlling the income and the wealth of the United States, is by diligently putting themselves, building a reserve like we talk about in life insurance, so that they have the access to the money they need for the purchases that they want to make in their life.
Saving money is different than investing in our vocabulary. We make a distinction between that because so much of the financial advice today says you get out of debt, save enough for an emergency fund, and then just invest. That's the message that's bombarded. But when you invest in things that you cannot access or can't control for a big part of your life, what about everything between now and retirement? If you focus on the financing for that portion, that's what savings is for. And so we make a distinction between that type of savings in our vocabulary versus investing long-term for the future. When we focus on the savings for the near term, then that allows us to recover some of the cost of financing that we've been talking about throughout this show. It allows us to cope with rising costs. It allows us to make more decisions from a management standpoint than from an emergency standpoint.
Charles Munger, the former CEO of Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's partner, said, save $100,000 and the rest is easy. Now, you may not save $100,000 depending on where you're at in the financial scheme of things, but the message is clear. Nobody gets anywhere unless they save. Very few people have made $1 million or made their fortune on rates of return. It's about controlling assets, and life insurance is an asset. That's why we encourage people to buy participating whole life insurance to store their capital in cash values so that it can be leveraged and used and generate money like assets generate.
So many people think, oh, I'll invest and I'll get all this money and then that will shorten the time that I need to save. Or maybe I haven't saved and I'll just make this investment and then I can, get a lot of money quick. But that's not how it works. And many people lose money in investments and they don't We don't hear about that. People don't post on social media that they are losing money in investments. In fact, many times people like to boast of their investments. And I remember someone one time boasting about their investment in Microsoft. And when it really came down to it, it turned out they had $50 invested in it. So be careful who you listen to. Just what they're saying and what they're showing on social media may not be the actual truth or all the truth. It may not be the painful truth.
It's not surprising that the systems of the world often create more problems than the ones they're trying to solve. The solution is returning to fundamental principles. The infinite banking concept is such a fundamental principle because you finance everything you purchase. You either give up interest that you could have earned, or you pay interest to use somebody else's money, and they're going to earn the profit off of that. If you organize your finances in such a way to recognize this reality in your life and to profit from it, then your results will be better.
It's been said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. If you want different results, you need to do something different. You need to think differently.
Remain mindful of these realities, and you can arrange your finances so that you can recover the cost of things that you finance. And come back next week, where we're going to talk about how to become your own banker right here on Wealth Talks.